Good morning, everyone. I'm Carol Betancourt. I'm here today on behalf of Chyron on the Veterans TV booth at NAB 2024 here in Las Vegas, and I am going to talk about complete visual storytelling. Those of you who know television and know the history of television know that Chyron is somewhat of a legendary name. It was in the 60s when watching live television meant that you were watching the space race, you might be watching news about the Vietnam War, you might be watching certain sporting events, but you certainly weren't seeing much more than what the camera feed showed you. And if you were seeing letters on the screen that augmented the storytelling of what the camera was showing you, those letters would have been cut out of some kind of white cardboard or paper, laid on top of a black background and filmed, and then that film would be the overlay for the live video that was coming through. All of that changed when Chyron invented digital graphics around 1966, and even today that legacy is so strong that even today sometimes people will refer to a lower third graphic as a Chyron, regardless of whether it comes from us, our equipment, or one of our esteemed competitors. The genericization is Chyron. However, today, the capabilities of live visual storytelling have gone way beyond just the graphical overlay. That was a great efficiency in its day, and it still is. I would hate for us to have to go back to cutting letters out of white paper in order to get those visuals, but now we can do a lot more. So starting with CG graphics, since that is what I'm talking about here, and that is our legacy, I will be using Chyron products as an example, but there's certainly others out there on the market. Our state-of-the-art live-to-air graphics generator is called Prime. It is a relatively new software-based system, and it can support not only CG, but it can support other applications, video walls, branding tickers, edge graphics, a whole host of other things, so that same designer tool set can be repurposed in multiple ways. We do take pride in offering a top-tier designer tool set that is comparable and probably intuitive if someone is used to using Photoshop, for example, or other design tools or other CGs. They would find ours relatively intuitive, and they would find that they can do almost anything that they want. Upstream of the CG, we live in a digital age, so it's possible to create your digital graphics elsewhere. The world is not full of Chyron operators. There are a lot of them, thankfully, but there are a lot more Photoshop users. So we do allow a robust import of that product as well as others. All layers, all text is editable, everything can be moved around, the parameters change, whether that's color, size, shape. So you have that design efficiency, you have the design power, and then in addition to this robust tool set, which allows keyframing, allows Photoshop import, you have other efficiencies these days. Branding, and I'm not talking at this moment about branding, downstream branding overlays and traffic. I'm actually talking about the station brand, colors, and logo. You can change branding easily for your morning or afternoon shows by using base scenes or other scene tools that allow you to quickly change out the look and feel of an entire package without opening each graphic one by one and changing colors, changing logos, and so on. So we're really looking for a lot of operator efficiency, creative efficiency, and in this day and age, visual storytelling also means presenting your audience with data. That might be election data, we're in one of those years, and it might be where TV gets exciting. It might be sports data, it might be historical sports data on a certain player, a certain team, or it might be of the moment data of the current game that you're watching. It could be weather data, any kind of data that has to come in. And we've really worked hard to go beyond it was and is an efficiency to be able to identify a discrete datum within a data source and tie that to a certain field in your graphic and have everything update in real time without having to type in whatever figures you want to display. But we're now at the point where we're parsing natively in our CG entire pipelines of data. without any special extra scripting. So I always define it as a three-legged stool. You have to have your design, you have to decide how you're going to animate it or play it, but I think you really have to incorporate any data that you want to display. And then once all of that is happy and well and looking good and working like you want it to, we have automated playout and we have manual playout. Chyron is especially strong in automated playout. That's our strongest roots are in news production, but there's a lot of demand these days in live-to-air sports production, and we do have a heavy presence in a lot of OB vans, OB trucks, and in that world, it's very important to be able to recall something quickly, make the changes that you want quickly, and get it to air quickly. So we really do try to be mindful of those keyboard shortcuts and other things that you can program in. We also have been working very closely with some top-tier sports broadcasters. NBC Sports and Olympics has driven a lot of our most recent upgrades to ensure that their operators are never allowed in the design interface. They don't need to diddle around with going back and forth. They don't have time. And the station doesn't want to risk the brand in that manner. So we have very complex control panels that can be customized so that the downstream operators can be exposed to whatever they need, but not the things that they shouldn't be meddling with. So that brings me to the whole story-driven workflow. And I'm going to pivot back to news for a moment. You can edit that out? Okay. Thank you very much. We were speaking, I think, in this room before I actually settled into doing the presentation. We were talking about changes in the industry, and it was a big change for those of us who remember the early 2000s when we were pivoting to MOS-driven workflows. And there was a lot of brouhaha, maybe amongst certain creatives. No, the people in the newsroom are going to muck it up. It's not going to be right. This can't happen. We don't want this. There was some defensiveness of jobs and so on. But today, a MOS-driven newsroom is the standard. It has been adopted as an efficiency, and even creatives who maybe once saw it as a threat now see it as an efficiency that allows them to be more creative, ensures that the things that they create become templates in the way that they want them to become templates, and that everything goes to air at the time that it's intended by the journalist for it to go to air without so much running around. So a MOS-driven workflow not only works in a single station, but it can work across multiple stations with a hub and spoke or a stem and leaf workflow where you can have your creatives in one place supplying everything, or you can have requests coming from multiple places as to what the needs are. One thing about a distributed workflow is it allows you to access and manage your graphics from everywhere. So even though MOS workflows first became an efficiency in the early 2000s, now that we're in the age of REMI, the new normal that COVID sort of defined for us as far as people being able to work remotely, a MOS workflow is being leveraged in new ways, allowing people to work from home but log into their NRCS plugin or log into their graphics station and put things where they need to be. Let's see. So I'm going to talk a little bit also in a MOS workflow. The original efficiency was designed for graphics in the newsroom. So tying your graphics to your iNews rundown or your EMPS rundown or your Octopus rundown or any other NRCS, Newsroom Computer System rundown. We and several other vendors have also incorporated the ability to have a plug-in to your NLE. So you get the efficiency of create once, use both in live and post. Create once, ensure that the brand is the same across live and post. And the NLE plugin can work in two different ways. You can render out your template at the graphics system level, and that gets sent to the NLE where someone can put it in the timeline, or you can put a queue in the timeline that will work in very much the way that a MOS newsroom integration works, where the queue calls up the graphic at the correct time. And that's a good way to work if you want to have data, real-time data updates and things like that. So you don't want your graphic rendered out in that particular case. So I've talked all about graphics, I've talked about efficiencies in making and playing out graphics, but I want to also talk about visual storytelling growing beyond graphics. We started with just the camera, the white letters, we added digital graphics, we added some efficiencies, but now we're starting to think of our storytelling not in 2D so much, but in 3D, almost like a stage manager. What is the whole picture that I'm trying to create here? So one thing that we can add to our visual storytelling is virtual sets, augmented and virtual reality. And sometimes when we talk about virtual sets and we wander through the show floor here and we see a green screen and we see some cool stuff, and people think, oh, that's cool. You know, what am I going to do with that thing in my production? But it can be a very big cost savings. I'll give you an example. One of our clients, Telemundo, was preparing for the recent Tokyo Olympics a couple of years ago, and that was during COVID, and they didn't want to send their entire Miami team to Tokyo. But they'd already built a fairly expensive set in Tokyo. So there was talk of replicating that set in Miami, but that was going to cost a lot of money. So they approached Chyron, and we helped them develop a virtual set. And there was some level of conversation, and I might be getting the details a little murky here, but I can give you the gist of it. The gist of it is that the conversation was, that's not going to be good enough because it's not going to look as real as the real set. The viewers will notice that there's a disparity. And we have to see it before it goes live to air. And when the day came to test it and to show side by side the feed from Japan on the physical studio and the feed on the virtual set, someone pointed out that indeed that one on the left just didn't look as real. It wasn't, something was off, and it turned out that that was in fact the real one. So you can do a lot with virtual sets, and you can create fantastical environments as well. I think that implementation saved, it may have cost between $100,000 and $200,000 as opposed to building a new studio for $1 million. So there was a significant cost savings there. We also were involved with several projects with OS Studios. One of those was the ATT Annihilator Cup, and in that case it was a gaming show that was going to be streamed, and they wanted a fantastical set that you would never build in real life. There was a platform with a spiral and it was up in the clouds, and you just wouldn't build something like that. So you can make realistic things for cost savings, you can save money. You can also save space if you're building, or maybe a university, or maybe a base facility that has broadcasting capabilities, but limited space. If you have a green screen, one day that green screen can be a standard news desk, another day that green screen can be a weather implementation, another day it might be something more fantastical or something that indicates a place where people might be talking about traveling. So there's a lot that you can do with virtual sets, and in the whole ecosystem of live to air graphics. Now at Chyron, I'm not sure who else is or is not doing this. I make a habit of never talking about what my competitors are doing because I don't know what they developed yesterday, and I don't know what they're working on right now. But we at Chyron can now drive those virtual sets within a MOS rundown the same way that you can drive your live to air graphics. So you can have the journalist put the cue in, for example, that we want a weather segment here, so we're going to pivot to the weather set, and that's a virtual set, and I'm going to put that cue in my rundown the same way I might put my lower third in my rundown. So that's pretty cool. Here is just a couple visual examples of what a virtual set might look like. And it can be designed, ours are based on the Unreal Engine, most are, but within our playout system there is a lot of capability to edit it, and there is the capability to bring live data in that can be updated in real time, that can drive the parameters of certain elements in your virtual set. So if you have a bar graph, for example, growing out of the floor, the bars can change heights as the data changes. Another important thing that drives viewership for various television stations is weather. We all want to know, do I put my rain boots on today or my sneakers? Do I wear a coat? Do I stay home? Should I go out for a run, or is it going to start pouring on me? So I've seen a lot of statistics that say weather might even be the #1 driver of viewership. So it is an important part of your visual storytelling. And again, we are not the only vendor who offers weather visualization, but with our weather visualization suite, we've tried to make it very easy to use so that even an everyday reporter or an all-purpose reporter, if you will, could manage to come up with a weather report. But we also make the tools robust enough so that a trained meteorologist would be satisfied and feel like they were able to express what they wanted to express. The weather presentation can be fluid. It can, and I would recommend anybody looking to add a weather segment, look into who your data provider is going to be. There are public data providers in most countries in the world, but there are also private data providers. Our system will accommodate data from both of those. Our system allows you to make various styles of maps, various regionalities of maps, entire global presentations, pick the cities or regions that you want to show in real time, and as I said, data provider agnostic. With a scalable architecture, we do have some stations. We recently launched a very young weather presenter in South Africa at a station called Ombitsak, and her presentation was so good that her bosses extended her segment, and seconds mean a lot in airtime. I think she had 1:30 for airtime. She's now granted 3 minutes of airtime, I believe. She's making good use of our tools, and they may allow her to scale up and get a version that allows greater data implementations and greater visualizations, such as the one that you're seeing here. The weather segments can also be rendered out, and they can also be placed in a MOS rundown, just as your graphics, your virtual sets. Other visual content that you might want to include in your holistic 3D storytelling is your studio itself. Now, you can't buy new furniture every day, you can't change the wallpaper every day, but if you use a video wall, an LED display, you can change what's on that display. Our Prime CG can also be used to design and populate graphics on large video walls. Ours happens to work with any aspect ratio, any pixel count. You don't need additional channels. I know some will take multiple 16:9s and stitch them together however it's needed. Ours can do the aspect ratio that you need, which I think is an important differentiator. And your content can be branded according to all of your CG content, or you can show something different. You can have the sun coming up in the morning, you can have the city lights on at your evening news. However you want to change up your studio, a video wall is a good way to do that. And I think you probably know what I'm about to say. All of that content can also go in your MOS rundown. So that can be story driven for complete end-to-end storytelling. So let's... Sure.
You said Prime. Prime is the name
of the
model of Chyron?
Yes, it's replacing Lyric.
Gotcha.
Yes, it is. So just to give it a definition, Prime is what we call our graphics engine. It is fully software based, so it can live in hardware that we provide with it. It can live on COTS. It can live in the cloud, implemented on AWS, and it supports our CG. The design engine also supports our video walls, our I'm losing my train of thought here. It supports anything visual that you might want to play out.
So just start back with, you were going to start, I stopped you on that slide.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So with the Prime engine and with your video walls, you have user definable input and output configurations. So you can populate any size video wall. You can drive multiple video walls if you want. You can drive them in the format that you want. And it is compatible with multiple video standards. There is lots of opportunity in our industry. I think during COVID times, some people defected from our industry. It was hard to go in and work in person, but there are lots of opportunities. In fact, there are even labor shortages in some place. So I would encourage anybody who wants a place in this industry to learn more. One thing that I'm very proud of during my tenure at Chyron, my primary mission, or the definition of my job, is to get leads and help our salespeople sell stuff to people. I don't think anybody wants to use our stuff or buy our stuff if they can't find qualified users. So we do have a complete online academy. It's not just a random collection of videos. There's nothing wrong with that. Those can be very, very helpful. But ours starts from square one. You see a 10 to 12 minute, some are shorter, some a little longer, but an easily digestible video demo. And then you get a simulation where you click and you're given a task, and if you get it right, you move forward. If you're struggling, you get a clue, then you take a little quiz, then you move on to the next concept. And for designers, you can earn a basic level yellow belt, intermediate level green belt, an advanced level blue belt. You can even submit a complete ready-to-air package with animations, data integrations, and nicely styled graphics, and earn your black belt. And that's for Prime, so that we can educate that Lyric user base, which is pretty global, to a more robust Prime user base. And we also have training on there for other products that we have, and where you can access it is there. If you like, for the final edit, I can send you a QR code that goes there. I didn't put it in here. Are there any questions that you would like to ask me? Yes.
So explain the MOS workflow. There's nothing there with that term.
I should give definitions, shouldn't I? Yes, thank you for asking. So MOS is an acronym that stands for Media Object Server. It is a protocol that allows various newsroom devices to communicate with one another. So typically the CG or the video system was not designed to communicate with anything else. It was designed to play out graphics downstream to a switcher, but not really interactively communicate. Now with using the MOS protocol, it can communicate with the newsroom computer system. So the way it used to work would be, if you were the producer of the 6 o'clock news and you wanted a lower third that had 2 text lines, and you wanted it to have Jeff's name and someone else's name, you wanted several of them, and you gave the designers all the names, and then you were doing some coverage of a special event in your city, so you want maybe a sidebar that has more information, and then you're going to talk about the mayor, so you want an over the shoulder that has his headshot. So you have all these things that you wanted. You would have given your graphics team an order for maybe 100, maybe 200, maybe more graphics that you're going to need for the 6 o'clock news. Not very efficient. And then when the 6 o'clock news happened, typically those very same designers would then become the operators, and they would be frantically calling things up to play them at the right time with the right stories. Now they make the design, and I'll go back to the example of the lower third with just 2 text lines. They would set that design up so that maybe the background, whatever your yellow look for your station and your station logo, none of that's going to move or change. The text fields are not going to move either. The font that they produce is not going to change. It's going to be how you want it branded. But that template can be called up in the newsroom where the journalist is writing their story. So their story will go to the teleprompter at the right time in the rundown. They call up this template that has these 2 text lines, and they can put whatever name they want in there. They drag it into their story, and then when that story goes to air, it comes up on the prompter and the presenter is talking about it. That graphic plays automatically with the text that they've specified, and then there is no operator. There's no need to drive it that way. Does that make sense? Excellent question. You're very welcome. Yes, any other questions?
I have a question, but I'm going to ask you offline.
Okay. Okay, should I stop?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, why don't you say goodbye?
Okay. All right, I'll leave this so
Oh,
it looks the same. Thank you so much for listening. It has been a real pleasure to be a guest of Veterans TV today, and I wish all of you the very, very best.